Welcome to Pax Europiana here from Linz on my campaign for Nato membership of Austria. Here now a stop in Linz in Upper Austria, a beautiful capital, similar like Graz, Innsbruck and Salzburg, and it's very beautiful here. And I call here for Nato membership. And I would, of course, not only explain the military, the defense, the moral, the solidarity arguments which I have already, but it's also a wonderful symbol, and it's very topical here to discuss what Austria has basically missed in the last 25 years since it joined the European Union. Since 95, it's now 27 years, almost 30 years. And what happened basically, we didn't reform. We didn't reform. And the few moments we did reform, we reformed under very difficult circumstances, some parts of it. But ultimately we have now, especially since 2008, not done anything significant. And the NATO membership debate is a very good symbol, because all of the politicians in Austria, and I know many of them, they knew very well that we should have joined in 95, as I said in Tirol Live yesterday. And they knew very well also that we should have joined in the time of the 2000 coalition, where the ÖVP and Schüssel was leading. Obviously we should have done that, but no, we didn't. And then after the financial crisis, obviously we should have done that. But no, we were happy with anti-Americanism, we were happy with the prosperity which the EU membership, protected by Nato, because never forget, it's not, we told obviously in 95 and during the campaign that the EU is the big peace project, but ultimately it's NATO which secured the peace in Europe since 49, and the Americans who won the Second World War. We didn't tell that so clearly because we wanted to convince the people to join the EU. Obviously it was the EU, the big peace project, and it is of course two pillars of the same coin, the two alliances of the West. The one more economically, the other more defense, but they work in harmony and they connected. They are part of the same Western value and democracy system, which was built up by the Americans after World War II, not to have something like the World War II again, and in order to win the confrontation in the Cold War with the Soviets, obviously. Yes, but I want to say that, the last 27 years were extremely successful for Austria. Because why? We got 1.5 million new people from Eastern Europe, who are mostly from Eastern Europe, mostly from the Balkans, mostly from our neighboring country, who now live happily in Austria, or not so happily, some of them. And I want to talk about that. 1.5 million more people, but we have not integrated them very well. We are still, the Austrians against the rest, like it was before. Austria is a very xenophobe, protectionist country. This is against the West. And then you see it with the trade treaties which we don't support, Mercosur, TTIP, and the other ASEAN, and all this populism against, but also protectionist against the East here, mainly against people. And you see that consistently. And even when the people then live 10 years here in Austria, they don't get the citizenship. We are the third most protective country, which makes the citizenship obtainment the most complicated in the world, after Singapore and Kuwait, or whatever the statistic is, because it seems to be a big privilege to be Austrian. And then people are here 10 years, maybe generations, and still in threat of deportation because they have no passports. And some of them, in the second generation, they're not deported because there was some kind of irregularity in their integration process, and then they're getting deported in the second generation to Kosovo, to European Kosovo. It's completely ridiculous and actually appalling what we do in the integration policy. And it's just one of the symbols where we basically now 27 years of enormous new prosperity made possible by 1.5 million new people coming. Because when I was finishing high school, we were about 7.5 million people. Now we are 9 million. And this 1.5 million new people, they came here mostly from NATO countries, by the way, who are very happy to join from Southeastern Europe. Of course not Serbia, that's a very specific problem, but all my listeners know that. The situation is obviously that these people, they came here, but they were never very welcome in a sense. From the state, from the economy, yes, they are productive. And also from the society, I would say, because we are, in general, the Austrians are good people. But the political world, the one who reject NATO, they rejected as well passports for the new people, because then they are voters, and they rejected the real kind of embracement of the European idea. while the Austrian economy was of course having a huge opportunity with the opening of the East, and no country has benefited so much from the transformation of being no longer the border country of the Cold War, but being in the heart of a new continent which is uniting, and the new countries, the 30 new countries, and now 9 more coming into the European Union under the protection of American-led Nato. And this was of course transforming Austria. And now we are much richer, especially when you want to make the difference between the population who lived there before 1990, also often very mixed, because Austria was of course, especially Upper Austria, was the place where the gate of freedom, you can call it, where Patton and the Americans have protected, and then all the people who wanted to flee from Eastern European Soviet aggression, and after 45 they were ending up, they were coming here because it was the first place of safety. And many of the companies here are from families who came from Romania, from Slovakia, from Ukraine, but seemingly some of them have forgotten their origin, it seems. Yeah. Anyhow, but they all got now very rich, because the last 27 years of EU-backed and NATO, of EU prosperity backed by NATO, has led to enormous wealth. When you look around, you know, the cars are rich, the property is expensive. Linz is a very good example for the wealth which has accumulated now in the last 27 years, but they were never ready for change. Yeah? They were never ready to say yes. Then also, for example, in Upper Austria, we have a lot of people from the Balkans. Have we been open and nice to them? Not exactly. Have they helped us to build everything and to renovate the buildings and to invest and also to extend to the markets? Yes, they have. Yeah? But we have not said yes, and they got, of course, some salaries, and also many of them are now well integrated. Yeah? But not as good as it could if this kind of the readiness to change would have kept up the pace of what was needed. And in 95 we were ready for change. Yeah? We knew that we will change. This will not be this alpine kind of protective republic. We will be a EU member state, yeah? Exposed to the world and benefiting from the world. And the prosperity is rising and the opportunities are rising, and that's all very good. We knew that. And this is then quite questionable that the Austrian political elite, yeah, did not discuss anything of the more complicated issues, like discussing the NATO membership, for example. That is one very good symbol. But then also the opening of the labor market, the integration of the new countries of the Western Balkans, especially dear to our heart. No. And when I call now Austrian politicians join my campaign for NATO, they say no. When I say let's really campaign and explain that Ukraine will come to the European Union and to NATO, they say no, that's too dangerous. Yeah? When I say let's open the labor market for all the countries of the Western Balkans, they say no, the FPÖ will win. And then Mr. Stelzer, the governor, works with FPÖ here as a government coalition. This is utterly wrong. He should kick them out. Yes. They take the money from Putin, they take the orders from Putin, they are against the West and unity and Ukraine and Kosovo, and they must be out of all government positions, yeah? And they must be exposed as what they are, the Russian servants of whatever kind of ideology they have, hate and National Socialism. That's basically what they are for me. Yes, in a short nutshell. So, and exactly, but why they came up? Why they came up from the whole time of Haider to now, to Kickel and all in between? Well, of course, they had international sponsors, like Haider took the money from Saddam and from Gaddafi, and now Kickel, that I cannot prove obviously, but for sure Strache took it from Firtash and from all these oligarchs around him. And so the situation is very clear. That they have basically always taken the money from the outside and somehow worked with the baddest part of the Austrian ideological spectrum. And their hate to America is unprecedented. Their love for Russia is great. Yeah? And that's exactly a party which is poisonous, xenophobic, anti-Semitic and evil, and they shouldn't be in the government, especially in Upper Austria, in the birthplace of Adolf Hitler. And then in this party, in my time, there were still the grandson of the Gauleiter in the party. Really, it's so bad. Huh? And especially in Upper Austria, the FPÖ should not be in a government coalition. It's absolutely wrong. And also then the policies are accordingly. Because what you need, of course, is to adopt Austria and Upper Austria as well to a European environment. Promote the trade treaties, support Ukraine, help the refugees, take more refugees when there's needed. But they're all not doing it. They're all doing the wrong thing. And when it comes to integration, obviously you should have much more work in the integration sector. But it's not happening. On the contrary, there was recently some kind of mini riot here because the people seemingly are not allowed to work and don't feel welcome, and then they get crazy ideas. And I wonder what is exactly wrong here. And I know it actually. It's the lack of effort of the Austrian People's Party to really adopt change after 95. And there's nefarious cooperation with the nationalists, and then of course Putin's love to Austria and his readiness to fund everybody who is against America and who is problematic. And the neutralist countries obviously are the first on his list because they are the easy entry gates into the European Union. And then Schüssel was the gatekeeper and the pate of Putin for the last 20 years, and he has profited handsomely. And in this mess we are today, and Leitl and many others, of course Heinz Fischer, the socialists are even worse, But for our people, they cannot make any excuses, because for the socialists I can always say they are okay, they were with Russia, they were always with Russia, they are like Russians, But on our side, on the Christian conservatives, on the liberals, on the center-right, on the reasonable, rational people, I cannot forgive anybody who takes the Russian money and promotes anti-Americanism and calls strategic autonomy, Austrian neutrality as a role model for Ukraine, and all this absolute nonsense Sebastian had to do in order to do all these things. Anyhow, I got new emails, so I'm distracted because I'm doing that on my telephone. Good. I call for Austria to join Nato and to be a normal European country, open the labor market to all EU candidate countries, have fast-track integration, adopt the euro all over the new EU candidate countries, open our markets to the free world, and make sure that we have a trade agreement from America to India, to Australia, and all the missing 10 I have repeated many times. And also to work on our competitiveness, on our infrastructure, connect us with the Czech Republic and with Bavaria here, that's regionally, build the railways towards the Balkans through the Alps, and really reform and be more open and embrace Europe and embrace the West. And let's explain that we are part of that value community, and not that we are some kind of special Austrian neutrality against America and all this bullshit propaganda and all this Serb toxic pro-Russian narratives and all this talk that we have to lift the sanctions, as if the sanctions would be the problem and not the war. How can a serious man like a governor, a Landeshauptmann, say such nonsense? It's really very disturbing for me, and I can just say that I'm deeply disappointed with the governing elites of Austria since especially the financial crisis, with the anti-Europeanism, the lack of embracing the pro-Western agenda and the reform and European agenda. And now the buck stops here, and they have to really open up, and they have to perform, and they have to integrate Austria and especially Upper Austria into the West, as we always have been. I don't know. Did anybody... Do you really love Russia, Mr. Stelzer? I mean, you do nothing for the sister city of Linz, Zaporozhye. I have written so many letters to Büringer, and not to Stelzer at that time, because, also to him. And we are Facebook friends from the youth. What has done? Did anybody not know that Ukraine will explode, that we're living on a volcano of a disaster since Minsk? I knew it, and I wrote it every day on my profiles, and I sent it to all the politicians. I remember in 2017 I was re-invited here by the Rotary, and I talked already about NATO the need to reform, to open, to conclude the trade agreements, and to reduce taxes, to integrate Kosovo and Ukraine into the EU and all these things and in Nato. I said it all to the people here. I mean, then they said, oh, Günther's crazy. Guys, and now, because it's exactly Sebastian and Thomas and all these people, great leaders, they said in the EPP, I was told, that Ukraine's integration is too expensive for the EU. We cannot do it. I'm sorry, we cannot do it. And now the cost of the war, overall, if I say it's in trillions. How expensive is that if you calculate the whole costs of the energy crisis and the food crisis, the global crisis, the military supply, the destruction of Ukraine, the refugee crisis, yeah. I'm talking about several trillions of euros which will cost for European taxpayers. And I warned you all that this is a volcano, you have to do it. And if we would have done it, and here is the first time Tymoshenko is really right, it was absolutely avoidable by EU and NATO integration of Ukraine before 2022. And even before 2014, if we would have integrated Ukraine, it would have been much cheaper and much better, and the war could have been avoided already in 2014, but certainly in 2022. That I know 100% sure, because I was in Kiev. I was telling everybody, let's get Ukraine as it is into EU and NATO to make it secure from a further attack, because it can always happen. And it came, and now trillions of costs on our shoulders for generations because of complete lack of capacity to adopt to the reality what is Eastern Europe. And everybody who knows history, that that you go to all the monuments here and you see the people who died on the battlefields, the Upper Austrians on the battlefields of Eastern Europe, and that this is important, I think everybody knew. And who didn't listen, I'm really very sorry. So, time to embrace a reform agenda for NATO. I cannot keep the flag so long, but please, Upper Austria, embrace change and reform and adopt to modernity. Times are changing, we have to change as well. There will be much better times ahead, but we have to reform and to open and to embrace Europe and Ukraine and Kosovo and the Americas, and not to hide behind big walls and important positions and build coalitions with the friends of Putin. That's not possible. That must not stand. Thanks a lot. All the best. Bye. Thanks.